Welcome to the Broker Bartenders 2025 edition. This is actually our first episode for 2025.
Yeah.
And great to be joined by my wingman, Ryan Clark, as always. Ryan, sir, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How about yourself? How's things out west? I see you've got Rooster coming in, in the scene behind you.
There's the new dog, Rooster. So, of course, that plays right into the whole Top Gun.
Yeah.
Ice. So now we have Ice, we have Maverick, and now we have Rooster officially. We'll have to start making him a part of this podcast permanently for that. So, and super excited to be joined by Colleen Nichols. She is a rock star super agent out in California, in the Temecula area. And so we're going to talk a little bit about today, kind of what's going on with the devastating fires that are happening out in Los Angeles and, California in general. And so, Colleen is not, right in there, but she's close, she's around there. And so she's has a good perspective of kind of what's going on and, being in real estate. And as we're trying to navigate a real estate market in general, really kind of taking the next step, looking at what's going on, out there specifically and what kind of impact something like this has on real estate, on homeowners, on insurance, on the whole gamut, because it's encompassing of pretty much everything. So,
in real estate terms, Colleen's in it adjacent.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Adjacent.
It does absolutely impact the whole state, though, because as you mentioned with, insurance companies, they've pretty much kind of closed their doors. And for a minute there, honestly, they put a moratorium on issuing any new policies. So as soon as those fires kicked up and started taking out entire neighborhoods, entire cities, basically, they're like, we're going to just kind of not issue anything new. And anybody that's in escrow or had something pending, they couldn't close.
Wow.
It just stopped everything. I had one gentleman, he was buying in San Diego, which is nowhere near where the big fires were happening. And they go to write the policy and they said, hey, no, we're not going to give you a policy right now. We're going to have to wait. We have a moratorium on new. And he's, calling around and everyone said, no, that's a blanket statement for every insurance company in the state. So it's like, what do you do? Right.
Yeah.
So we got an extension. I'm like, there's nothing else you can do.
Sure.
We extended it, got 10 extra days and now he's good. The policy, they lifted it. We got the policy issued. He's actually closing in 6 days. So, but that was, I know, right? Yeah. It's frightening that they have that much power over our whole industry. But I kind of tried to reassure him. I said, the government is not going to let insurance companies completely shut down the real estate market. That's just not going to happen. It will change. It will get lifted and it will get fixed, but we just don't know how long it's going to take. And
it's an interesting look at it because my brother is in Florida and there are no insurance companies in Florida anymore. He has to run through like a state sponsored program for it. And he's not even coastal. He's in Jacksonville. He's 30 miles from the beach. I remember making fun of him for that. Like, oh, that sucks for you. 3 or 4 years ago when that started to happen after they got really devastated by a round of hurricanes. Where I am now in South Carolina, we're starting to see all the major players leave. State Farm just left. We're having a really, really tough time getting insurance. I had a client just close on a property 30 miles from any water source on a country club, and I couldn't get anyone to underwrite it. Just they're all leaving. Now we're having, if you buy a property, if the roof is not at least 15 years or 10 years old at an absolute maximum, they won't underwrite it. So, Tom, you and I used to have roofs that were not a problem because you get a hailstorm 2 years later. Take care of it. Yeah. We don't have that anymore. So it's an interesting look at Florida's gone. South Carolina looks like it's on the way out. California's got a moratorium. I think you touched on something interesting of what happens. What's the trickle down effect of, yes, the government's not going to let real estate just stop.
Right.
It can't, right? I think the most recent stat I saw was something like 94% of the net wealth of the American people is in residential real estate. So they can't let that just die on us, right? But what happens? What's next? What's the alternative? Is it all going to be state-sponsored programs or
state or federal, right?
Yeah.
And we do have a state-sponsored one. It's called CalFair. CalFair is the state-sponsored, and they said, oh, well, you could always get a state-sponsored insurance policy, but the problem is with what just happened, the Pacific Palisades, that's where all the money is in California. I mean, we're talking, this is the elite of the elite, the people with the money. So the estates reflect that, right?
Right.
The reserves that they had in the CalFair plan were somewhere in the vicinity of $395 million, just reserves sitting aside for if a house burns or if something happens and they file a claim. The amount of claims that have been submitted is over 250 billion with a reserve of 395 million.
Wiped out.
Right? They depleted that in like the first couple of days with claims. So it's like, now what do you do? So
quick math is reserve is 8x, or your claims are 8x ish.
Yeah.
What your reserve is.
Correct.
What happens?
We ask for federal help. That's where it goes. It's like, sorry, we don't have any money to help you with. You're going to have to make a federal claim. And the problem with that is people are trying to go to FEMA and ask for federal assistance. They actually set up these camps in parking lots in the areas where these burns have happened. And these people are going to apply for it. And they're taking the ones that have no insurance first. It's like, only if you have no insurance coverage. I'm like,
wow.
Well, I mean, that's kind of sad because, and I mean, in one way and not another way, because obviously people that don't have insurance are probably people that can't afford it, right?
Right.
So, trying to help the people that I guess would be in the most need, right?
Yeah. Sure. Which makes sense, of course.
Right.
It's a humane thing to do.
But then there's these other people that are like, I can't get any government assistance because I had insurance on my house. It's like they're being punished for doing the right thing. But the insurance companies are telling them they don't have any money, So
yeah, I think I saw too. There's a couple of philanthropy organizations out there that are kind of jumping in to help, with assistance for some of those victims of the fires where they just I think the FEMA check is like $770 or something like that that they try to hand out to them, and that's not going to really
fix it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
so
that'll maybe in California buy you a tank of gas and some groceries. Maybe you're lucky.
Two trips to Starbucks. Yeah. So I know that there's, as these things kind of progress and, people try to come together in these disaster situations where, you almost kind of looking back on the government side, it's like, hey, I'm like, Reagan used to talk about it. I'm like, hey, I'm with the government. I'm here to help. And that's where you kind of take off the other direction. Right. But, but I kind of want to get a sense from, just kind of, just what's happening, now in that, we know the insurance component, and how unaffordable that is in general, but now, with California and Florida and those locations where good luck, even trying to get it. But going back to the beginning of how this whole thing started and the devastation that happened, from a real estate perspective, when we look at that as a whole, what kind of impact does that have at the scale that happened in Los Angeles? I mean, we had the Marshall Fire out here at the end of 2021 in Boulder County, and I mean, it wasn't at that level, and they are just now on the back end of getting everything rebuilt and redone. And so when you kind of look at that process,
they're comparing ours a lot to what happened in Maui, just wiping out this
Lahaina.
huge area.
Mhm.
And I mean, in entire cities, it's Paradise. I know Paradise happened. What was Paradise? 3 or 4 years ago.
Years ago. Yeah.
And they're just now kind of getting back on their feet. And, you know, people are kind of moving back into the area. So they don't know exactly what the impact is going to be, because this is like a huge, I mean, this is Malibu. This is the Palisades. This is celebrity town, right?
Yeah.
This is where the elite of the elite lives. So,
Mhm.
you know, there's a lot of influence that is going to be involved in building this back. So, you know, the way that they talk, it's like it's going to be attacked quite aggressively. They've already talked about waiving certain restrictions that were in place for climate change, you know, green building, things that were supposed to impact the environment. These policies and these new building codes were put into place, and it was taking up to 2 years to get a permit when you wanted to build anything. So I know that they've removed a lot of the restrictions to kind of open it up to let people come in and start rebuilding. But right now, the biggest thing that they're trying to tackle is the hazardous waste, because we're talking about 15,000 homes that were wiped out in the matter of a week, and it's all toxic and it's washing into the ocean right now. So all of the ocean front is closed down. Everything is just kind of like still at the point where people are trying to wrap their heads around it. It's like, where do we take the hazardous waste? Where do we put it? They tried to find a dump where they could take it to, and now there's all these protests in the area because the people that live there are like, that's going to have an impact on us personally. It's going to affect us. It's going to make us sick. So they're trying to shut that down. It's like going back and forth. Now, the real estate impact, I can tell you about the people that have evacuated those places. And I'll use the family of my son's, my boyfriend's son. You know, they were living in a beautiful home overlooking on a bluff overlooking the ocean in the Pacific Palisades. The house was gone in a matter of hours and left with nothing. They fled to a hotel, and they were living there for the first week, and they were able to find a rental property in Santa Monica. They're renting a condo. When they applied for that condo, the person that was taking the application said, take it now or it's going to be gone. I've got a waiting list of people. And they just happened to be, you know, at the top of the list on this particular unit. But the situation is there's not enough rentals in the area to take in the number of people that are homeless. So they're staying with friends, they're staying with family, they're in temporary housing and trying to get their assistance settled. But there just isn't places for these people to go. And they're starting to actually move inland, you know, just trying to find places to stay, which is then affecting, you know, traffic and lifestyle, because I had a real estate agent that I had to go meet at a house, and he said, sorry, it took me so long. He goes, but I was stuck in the traffic because everybody's trying to get out of LA and everything is just at gridlock. So there's that. But now what's happening are these people that have properties that have rentals are realizing that everyone's in a desperate situation, and they thought the solution would be, I'll kick out the people that I have in there right now that have been, you know, tenants, long-term tenants that are loyal and have made their rent on time, because I can get more money for these desperate people. And of course, California has a law in place that says you cannot, if you have a tenant that moves out and you want to rent it to a new tenant, you cannot raise the rent more than 10%. Well, there are people that are not taking that into consideration and doing their own thing. And we got a notice yesterday via email from the DRE that they have arrested the second person for price gouging for rental. And wow. Yeah, they've jacked up their rents to double because they know they can get it because people are desperate and need it, and they have to put their family somewhere, but it's against the law. So there's a lot of just chaos right now going on in that.
So do you think so is this going to be where obviously there's going to be people that are going to rebuild and they're going to go through the process and, do all that kind of stuff too. And then there's going to be the people that are just not going to, hey, we're not going to come back. We're not going to do it.
There are a lot of people that are trying to come in and just buy the property for pennies on the dollar.
Right. So they can buy the land and
you can't rebuild, but it's still oceanfront property, right? It's
Right.
still the Pacific Palisades. It's still Malibu. Again, they're putting a stop to that as well. They're trying to find those people that are trying to take advantage. That's against the law in California. You can't take advantage of somebody that's in a desperate situation. So there's people that are kind of out there looking for that and trying to put a stop to it.
So would you say that even though if there are people that are looking to come in there just to buy the lots or they want to buy the land or things like that, and they're trying to be fair about it, I guess maybe. So they're not trying to, I don't know, do they look at that as a whole as taking advantage? Hey, we're just not going to do these kind of deals or any kind of, land acquisition or anything right now until we, figure that out, or I don't know, what's the sense, or have you heard anything like that?
Well, I haven't heard if somebody's really true. I mean, there were houses for sale in these neighborhoods that burned down, the people that were trying to sell before the problem happened. Right. And I guess if somebody were to come in and offer them a fair price for what's left, but again, I don't think right now they're letting anybody really do any transactions in that immediate area. It's just kind of like, we don't even know what's going to be left because it's going to take them months. They figure that, I think they said on the news yesterday, I think it was a projected somewhere between 6 to 8 months just to get the hazardous waste taken out. Yeah. Not even to you can't go in there and clean it up yourself. I mean, They're talking about asbestos. They're talking about lead. These are toxic elements that are in the air. The hazmat crews are going in full hazmat, to clean up areas, but they're trying to do it, methodically, correctly, and not impact the environment any worse than it already is. And it's like your home, if it's part of that, basically it's just been red tagged. Like you can't go in it. You can't do anything about it personally. You have to wait for the government to say it's okay to go there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, there's been the discussion on the whole, and we've all been at that level where we're trying to handle permitting and working with municipalities on permitting. And to the extent that you always have, a situation like in California where it always seems like in California, it seems to be blown up bigger than anywhere else, right? So if we're dealing with permitting issues or, things like that, say in Denver or say in Charleston. But then you look at it from a Los Angeles perspective and all the red tape and things that are involved with that, even on the permitting side. I know they're trying to see if they can kind of circumvent that a little bit or maybe pull that back, or kind of what have you been hearing? Have you been hearing anything about that, or have you experienced?
Yeah, again, I think everybody's still in the kind of the beginning stages of evaluation.
Yeah, it's still not over.
There's still some fire burning. There's still some, and again, we're still in fire season because because that fire's out and we did have some rain, or it's 95% contained and they're just putting out the hot spots. It doesn't mean that another one can't spark tomorrow. So it's, we're still in the fire season, and it was really scary actually after the Pacific Palisades, the Eaton fire, there was the Sunset fire, and then there was another one that burst that was called the Hughes fire, and they were all in the Los Angeles area. And it's scary because when one starts up, it just kind of like when you light a piece of paper, you start the corner and then you just see the whole thing just go across the paper. That's what it was like. It starts and it just goes like this, right? Well, when those were happening and we're watching those, all of a sudden we've got two that start up in San Diego. And then there was one, but those, honestly, I think the later ones were people that were literally going out and starting the fires because they saw what happened. It's like they saw the impact. And we had one that was less than a mile from my house. And I'm literally going, I run upstairs. I have a balcony on the back of my house. And I run up to the balcony and I'm looking to see if I could actually see the fire from my house. But it was in the wrong direction. But they spread so fast that you are immediately on evacuation notice. And notice means get your go bag, get ready to go. And if it says evacuation, you flee. And it's that fast. So it's like either you have a bag packed and you're ready, or you lose everything. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. So when the Santa Anas pick up, that's when they call it the fire season, right? And it's a seasonal thing. It's like it happens every year. There's nothing you can do about it. But when the Santa Ana winds pick up, you just are very diligent about watching what's happening and where it's happening. And like you said, it's still ongoing because there's still hot spots up there. There are still, like when they jump, all it takes is just an ember to be lifted and hit a spot that's dry, and another one starts
all over. Yeah.
And they actually they think they found the actual footage of the Eaton fire starting, which is the one that was on the other side of the mountain, a little bit further away, not as elite as Pacific Palisades. But there was a camera, some sort of a security camera, picked up the tower in the background that's on the hill. You could see up on the tower some sparking where the wires were hitting each other. And when it sparks, the embers fall straight down and light the ground on fire right below it. And that's all it took.
Crazy.
And here's me, I'm sitting there going, can't they put sprinklers on these towers? They can just shoot water like in a condo, I'm like, because this is where.
Yeah, that's tough because like, how do you know that's happening, right? So,
yeah,
I mean, that's, because it's eerily similar to the same thing that happened here with the Marshall Fire. It was the XL Energy situation where, there was, a tower fell because it was like 115 mile an hour winds that day.
Right. That's the Santa
insane.
Ana's here now. Yeah. Hurricane force winds. Yep.
Yeah. And we don't normally, we have a lot of open space up in this area, in that Boulder County area. And so it does get windy, but nothing like that. Right. And so when something like that happens, then it's just on and, just trying to figure that out.
And the catch-22 with the whole situation is the way that they attack it is by air. So you've got your helicopters and your airplanes that drop the fire retardant and the water on it. They couldn't fly because the winds
were too windy.
So that's why, it's like it had nothing to do with the faucets not being turned on. I'm sorry, I saw that on the news when he came here, and I'm like, there's no magic faucet that they decided to turn on or off. It was just we couldn't fly because it was too windy and it was too risky for those planes or the helicopters, either or. So it was trying to be fought from the ground, and you can't fight 19,000 acres from the ground. It's where it's the side of a hill, but
so what's the sense in the real estate community now of kind of, where does this go? And
I think we're just being really highly regulated right now. We're being watched. We're being, managed to the point where don't try to take advantage of anybody. Just and everybody's trying to help. There are a lot of fundraisers being done. Like there's two, there's one tonight and one tomorrow, I think, or maybe both of them are tonight. But all these celebrities got together, all these singers got together, and they're putting on these huge concerts for fire aid to raise money to try to help out. But as far as the real estate side goes, yes, we're all still we're in the shock. I think we're all still in shock right now, trying to figure out where do these people go? How do we handle it? They have to go somewhere. And right now, many of them, the majority of them, I'm going to say, are probably in temporary housing, and they're going to need assistance getting somewhere. But for example, my boyfriend's son, who lives in Hollywood, He was evacuated with the Sunset Fire. That's how close he was to it. He literally was 1 block away. There was a house on the end of his street that actually caught on fire, but they got it under control. He was evacuated. He fled. He was gone for a few days, and then he got back in. And then his landlord called him and said, yeah, I need to evict you. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm in a lease until next August. And they're like, oh, well, we want to put it up for sale. And I said, well, that's fine and dandy. You can sell it, but you're not getting evicted. And he tried to make an arrangement with his landlord. And I don't know if it's set or not, but supposedly the arrangement is you give me cash for keys, basically. I want 3 months equivalent to my rent so I can find a place to go. But unfortunately, like I said, there is nowhere to go. Where is he going to move to? I'm telling him, stay put, because you're in a good place and you've got a lease. You're locked in that lease until August. Even if somebody buys it, they have to honor the lease. So, if you move, or if you tell them that you're going to move and you agree to this, you might have some cash in your pocket, but where are you going to go?
Where are you going to go? Yeah.
So and I've never been to Temecula. I'll just be honest. I've never been there.
Why are you
I've been to Temecula.
Temecula is a great place to do a podcast. I'm just saying, we've got 52 wineries within 10 minutes of my house. Yeah, we have a place we could go and do that. It would be a beautiful
setting. All set up.
I like Temecula. I've been it's a nice area.
And I'm sure, And so would that create opportunity? Because we were talking about it was nowhere else to go, and I know that's a little bit further out from where they're at, but and again, probably too soon to tell or anything like that right now, but is there opportunity for, hey, we're out of here. This is really not going to work out for us or anything like that, but let's head to Temecula.
God, I hope not. So the reason I say that is because that's what happened during COVID. So I'm going to take you back a few years. When COVID hit, the living in Los Angeles and living in San Diego, it is very, very expensive. So rent in Malibu averages about $7,000 a month, just for normal living. Okay. Temecula rentals are between 3,000, 4,000 ish area. You can get a 5-bedroom, my neighbor's house, 5-bedroom, 3.5 bath, rents for $3,800 a month. Okay. So half what they're paying in Los Angeles or Malibu or Pacific Palisades or wherever. And then some. I mean, I just pulled up rentals in the area for Los Angeles. There is literally a house in Malibu for rent for $175,000 a month. There you go. You run the gamut. You put a target out there, you'll hit it, right? It doesn't matter. So having said that, during COVID, when everybody said, you have to work from home, roads are closed, it's a ghost town out there, nobody come into the office, all these people are paying $7,000 for a 500 square foot studio apartment in Los Angeles, and they're going, wait, what am I doing? I can go buy a house in the Inland Valley, and I might be stuck at home, but I got a backyard, I got a pool, I've got bedrooms, I can get a dog. It's like they're happy. They're like, I'm moving to the Inland Valley. That's when all chaos broke loose. So we were getting offers, 50, 60 offers, $100,000, $200,000 over asking, all cash. It was these people from Los Angeles and San Diego going, let's all move to Temecula, Murrieta, Menifee, Winchester, all of these cities that are relatively affordable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you've got all of us normal people that don't make, $15 million a year living in Los Angeles. And we're just earning a living and living in a normal neighborhood. Suddenly our house prices have doubled and then some, and rent prices have doubled and then some, because that's what people were offering. I'm going to pay it because I'm going to be stuck in a house for an indefinite period of time. Who knows how long? I want space. So that's what happened. And all these people flooded inland from Los Angeles and from San Diego. And now no one can afford to live pretty much anywhere. So are they going to flood the area? Possible. Did we triple our population during COVID? Yes. Did we end up building so many new homes that they could? I mean, and to this day, they still can't keep up with new construction. They sell out. There's a waiting list for all new construction. It's insane. And we thought we were affordable, but now, and this is why no one can afford to buy in California, the places where you could have bought a house for $300,000, $400,000, now those houses are selling for $800,000, $900,000, $1 million. I'm a perfect example. I bought my house before COVID. I bought my house. It's a 5-bedroom, 3.5 bath. Okay. Just under 3,000 square feet. I bought it for $484,000 and it now sells for over $900,000. But I can't buy anything for $900,000 and I can't afford the interest rate. So I'm not going anywhere. It's not like I'm camped out on it. It just is what it is. And it's really, that's why I say I hope not, because right now there is nowhere for these people to flood to. And we can't keep up with what happened still. We're still recovering from COVID. So
theoretically, your market could re-explode. Theoretically. Anyways, nobody knows anything.
Theoretically, yes, it could, because we have houses and there's new construction. If all of the new construction gets backed up again and they can't keep up, with the number of people wanting houses, they're going to find somewhere else to go. So theoretically, yes. Absolutely.
I mean, we saw that here in the South in what they call that urban exodus post-COVID. People were coming to places like Charleston, South Carolina. It's cheaper. It's by the water. It's warmer.
I love Charleston.
It's home. It's the home I've never had, and it took me better part of 40 years to get here. And now I'm very grateful to be here. But the market exploded. Charlotte exploded. Raleigh exploded. Atlanta exploded. Everywhere that's even a mid-sized micro city, because Charleston is only 200,000 people. It's not a city. It's a very large, small town.
Yeah.
And we can't solve our problem. I don't know if you have something like this. We have a major inventory problem, particularly in Charleston. But a little fun fact for everyone, does anybody know why Charleston's called the Holy City?
No.
The Holy City. I guess I never even.
So the Charleston is known as the Holy City because no building can be built taller than the tallest church. So you will see, other than a few buildings that are being built now that are designed and designated almost entirely for affordable housing, down by actually not too far from where I took you, Tom, when you came to visit. Nothing is taller than 4 stories. So we cannot solve our inventory problem by going vertical. Denver is trying to go vertical. We can't do that here. So you have to go into the outskirts, and they've overbuilt, and now things are kind of leveling off up there, but the market's on fire here. It's kind of like what happened to you there.
Yeah.
Market conditions elsewhere drove people here. Life conditions elsewhere drove people here because they wanted to be here anyways. People might be flooding to you, I don't want to say by default, because Temecula is beautiful. I love Temecula. But by default, like you said, where else are you going to go unless you leave California? So it's interesting to look at your market, because your market could either explode because everybody floods into you, or your market could stabilize or even drop off because everybody could leave. Everybody could say, like, hey, we're done with this California thing.
California thing, yeah.
Yeah, taxes are high. We're on fire, literally and figuratively. Let's just move to Charleston, South Carolina. Let's move down south. Let's move to Texas, where we can buy. There are still places in the outskirts of Dallas you can get a Colleen size house for like $350,000, new construction, and absolutely stunningly gorgeous. So
with a couple acres of land.
Yeah. So it's going to be, I think.
I don't have that.
Yeah. Most of us don't.
Right.
We don't really have that here because we can't also go any farther east because that's the Atlantic Ocean. So nobody has bigger lots. Everything's marshland out here. So we can't build more because of that. But you know what? One of the things that I was thinking about pivoting slightly, though, was I wrote down like 2 questions I really wanted to see what your thoughts were. One was what you think your market's going to do. And we kind of touched on that. The biggest one I was curious about is more of a macro, and it relates to what do you do when this happens? Because we get hurricanes here. We get stuff like that here, and every broker will tell you, hey, make your care calls. You had devastation far beyond a hurricane. Usually when we hit a hurricane here, a roof will cave in, one or two houses will get really damaged, but nothing too crazy. Here, there'll be some flooding, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
But you're making your care calls to your average person who does not have a $15 million house in downtown Charleston. How do you make a care call to your friends and family without sounding like a scumbag real estate
salesperson? Yeah.
Of being a salesperson? Not to name names, but Tom and I have a friend who was a lender in like 2006, 2007, built a massive book of business. The crash happened. And he said, you know what? The only people who are busy right now are my real estate agent friends. So he pivoted out of mortgages, ironically in Malibu, California, and said, I'm going to go sell. And he had this big book of business from doing lending. So he started calling every one of those people and being like, hey, how are things with you? Are you interested in selling? Are you doing okay? And everyone to a T was like, person's name, I'll say Tom because his name is not Tom. Tom, you gave me this garbage arm loan. You now want to monetize me again? So how do you not end up sounding like Tom and being that person who's making a care call, genuinely caring, checking in on friends and family without saying because we're taught in every call, who do you know needs to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? How do you make that call genuinely? Because we still have to do our jobs.
Because they know, they know you're a realtor.
They know you're a realtor.
Honestly, the people, my clients, I have people that I have as clients that they actually consider me family. Like they, they're just, I'm auntie so-and-so to their kids, or I'm that. And the people that, if they're in the areas where they're impacted, it's truly just are you okay? It doesn't even go into,
of course.
Do you want to get rid of it?
Right.
It's more.
I would hope not, but
it's more of how can I help you? And it's funny because that whole conversation did happen with the family that I know that lost the house. It's like, what can I do? How can we help you? And it was from the heart. Somebody's got something to say.
He needs to make a care call,
Yeah. But that conversation was no, it really was out of concern. Is everything okay? And we invited them to come and stay with us. We're like, we'll open up our doors to you. Come and stay as long as you need to, even though we're 2 hours away from where you need to be. I don't know how that, commute would impact your life, but there are clients that I have sold houses to that were within the evacuation area. And here's me. I swear to God, this is factual. I'm not saying this just to sound dramatic, but I've got the fire up on the TV. We've got an 85-inch TV where I'm like, we can see because they overlay a map and we're on our news, they'll have the fire, but then they'll overlay kind of the streets of where it is as the helicopters flying around. And we're watching. And then I've got my map open on my computer in front of me where the houses are that I know where people live. And I've got them all highlighted. And I'm watching where these fires are going. And if it were to get to a point where they were literally going to be impacted or lose their house, or whatever, I'm ready to make that call to say, hey, are you guys okay? What are you doing? How can we help you? And so that's how I handled that whole situation. And it was terrifying knowing that these fires are just, burning their way or creeping down the hill, or how soon before they're going to have to get, flee. And thankfully, because I do not work the luxury market and I do not have clientele that are in those multi-million-dollar mansions in the Pacific Palisades, there were only 2 families that I knew that were affected. So there's always another fire tomorrow, honestly.
Sure.
But there is another fire that happened up in the Crestline area, and I've sold a lot of houses up there because that's a lower price point, much lower price point, much more affordable. And I was watching that one as well. And you get concerned about the people that you've sold that house to. It's but it's funny. I'm also very meticulous in making sure that the people that do purchase homes that are in a high fire hazard area, because they're notified. That's part of your natural hazard disclosure that comes out. You get a report that says, are you in a high fire zone? And if so, what do you need to do? And they actually do defensible space fire preparation in the areas that is a situation where you have to cut all of your foliage back. You can't grow bushes higher than 2 feet. There's a whole thing that goes into that.
Sure.
So they're very well educated, and you just, you pray for the best, but there's nothing you can do to stop it. It's, they take on the risk when they buy there. So I want to get that phone call after the fact going, you sold me this house and I got, wiped out.
Yeah. I mean, there's very few places in the country where there's zero risk from a weather standpoint, right? Like you guys have earthquakes and fires. Tom, you've got fires and ice and snowstorms. Things could freeze, pipes could freeze. I mean, I used to hear about that all the time when I lived in Colorado, especially the people who lived in townhomes. Somebody would go home for Christmas, or apartments, especially when I was in college in Boulder. People would leave for Christmas, not turn the heat on or turn the heat off trying to save money. Right. There'd be one of those days where it was 10 below, pipes would freeze, they would leak, they would cause a massive water leak, and it would go into the next unit where everybody's doing the right thing. So you've got that there. We flood here from hurricanes. We get wind damage from hurricanes. You can't really escape the
natural disasters.
The issues. I mean, it's just... price of paradise. That's what I tell all my clients who are coming from out of area who ask me about flood insurance. A lot of people moving from Denver have never had to have flood insurance before. Right. And they're like, oh my God, is it gonna flood? I'm like, no, you're like 30 miles from the ocean. Like you're okay. But it's still obviously a concern. Yeah. It's just interesting. Now you can't escape it anywhere, but now you guys are having your turn it seems like you're getting hit pretty hard. This isn't just one little hurricane or one flood. This season
is really bad because we didn't have the last 2 seasons were pretty mild, kind of like with hurricanes, like, oh, it's a mild hurricane season, right? The fire seasons for the last 2 years were so mild, and we had a lot of rain. So because of that, a lot of the foliage grew dries out, and then it just becomes, tinder for the next fire. So it's like you can't win if you have 2 good seasons and a lot of rain to keep everything from burning. Then when it does dry out, then it's that much worse. And that's part of what the argument is. When they say, oh, you're not taking care, when you hear that report where they say, oh, you haven't done care to prepare for the next fire, for the next Santa Ana season, what they're talking about. And now I see it because since those fires have happened and I've had to go out and show houses on the side of the expressway, they have gone and they have mowed down all of anything that's there. I mean, I'm not going to say foliage because it could be weeds. It could be, just dry brush, tumbleweeds. They've cleared it out about 50 feet off of the side of the road, and they sprayed it with fire retardant. Now, the reason they do that on the side of the roads is because there are a lot of I don't know why, but there's a lot of car fires in California. I know, cars just burst into flame on the expressway. That's how hot it is in the summer. I have a lot of videos of cars on fire because you get stuck in the traffic waiting for, why are we sitting in traffic? And you finally get up to it, and there's like a car just burst into flames on the side of the road. So
overheated. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Overheated, caught on fire, flat tires, set, sparks fly, whatever reason. A lot of fires start from the brush on the side of the road. So it was actually reassuring to me to see that. I'm out, this was just last week. I'm out driving to show houses, and it was just, the fire retardant is a completely different color than the landscaping. So it might be orange, it might be red, it might be, this particular one was teal green. It was an ugly teal color. And I'm like, but I'm glad it's there, because you know that they're trying to prevent something else from sparking, that, or somebody throws a cigarette out a window. What stupid person would throw a cigarette out their window on the expressway? They do it. It happens. But, they're trying to do some preventative measures. But the ones that, like up in that particular area, I would say the Pacific Palisades in Los Angeles would not be deemed a high fire zone. It's not some place that they would expect this to happen. And that's why everybody's like, well, how did it start? Was it arson? Was it somebody that intentionally set a fire? We do have a lot of homeless encampments. Not to say that there's going to be a homeless encampment in the Pacific Palisades, but they tend to, when the weather gets to where it is right now, at nighttime, it's dropping really, really low into the 40s, and it's cold. And when they get cold, they're going to find a way to get warm. They don't go inside. They start fires. So I don't know how it started. They're still trying to figure that out. They're still investigating that. The one up in the hills, Eaton, they seem to think that it was the power lines from the wind. But there have been other ones, like if you see a fire and I've driven past one in downtown Los Angeles. Los Angeles is concrete. There's nothing to burn, right? I mean, it's concrete. There was a fire in the middle of Los Angeles, and I happened to be going to the airport that day, and I'm driving down. I don't even know which expressway it was now, but under an overpass, it was filling up with smoke, and there's a fire. It was a homeless encampment that somebody started a fire, and it spread and set everything around it on fire in the middle of, urban
concrete jungle.
Jungle. And I'm like, this is crazy. There's nothing to burn. It's concrete. But it happens. So if you could imagine that happening where there's nothing flammable or, high fire, if somebody were trying to stay warm and, some sort of a drainage ditch or what, because we have these water channels that, all the to prevent mudslides, there's all of these deep channels that direct water to the ocean. So, and they're huge. They let them grow. I don't know why. Like the one right by my house, I could go out there. It's like down the street, at the end of my street, there's this big ravine that is supposed to be for water runoff. And it's filled with trees and bushes because it's supposed to just be dirt. So, it can flood, it can drain, it can do what it needs to do. And that's where the bike paths are. Our bike paths are on either side of it. But right now it's all full of trees and bushes because we haven't had any fires to burn it out, and no one's going in there to remove it. Yeah. So those are the ones where they're like, you haven't been doing your due diligence. You have not been taking care of the issue to prevent this from happening in the future. And that's where the argument comes in. But people hear it on social media, or they hear it like when the whole thing, the last time we had really bad wildfires, and this was a few years ago, they were like, you didn't go out there and rake the forest. And that was a big thing. And they were making fun of it. They got all these memes with people with rakes standing on a hill in California. It's like, that's not what they're talking about. You're completely taking it out of context. You cannot go rake a mountain. It's just, that's not something.
Right.
But there are things that you can do, especially around the power lines. Like I said, why can't they put in some sort of a system, even if it's filled from a cistern, like up behind it on the hill, where water is fed to it, where that if there is something like a detection, a fire detection, we have AI now. You can tell if a fire is burning below you. Right? Put a camera on it, and if a fire starts, flood it with water. You can save an entire city that way. But it's hindsight is 2020. You can say, hey, but the idea is to, where you do have power lines, keep it cleared for a radius of, a specific distance away that's going to make it safe. Of course, you can't do anything about the wind, but there are things that can be done to help prevent it. And it's not the stuff that you hear on social media or in the news where, grab a rake. Come on, people, let's get out there.
100%. Without going down a political rabbit hole, because I don't think anybody wants to play that game. No. It feels like from an outside, from 3,000 miles away, the fire is pointing and shining a light on issues in the state of California. You touched
Right.
on one with homelessness. You do hear about that a lot with funds that are directed there, and everybody has an opinion on that. And that's not asking for that opinion or go down that rabbit hole. But
How much do we pay in taxes?
Right. So my question, I guess, to you is projecting forward from a real estate perspective. What do you think the trickle down effect is? One of my good friends, Kellen Porter, he runs Sotheby's in San Diego County, and he's always talking about how we love these developer clients that want to buy these properties in the Palisades or La Jolla or wherever, demolish something and build it up, but the permitting to build all this stuff up is enormously long.
Yeah.
And extremely restrictive. So do you see a world where there's an acceleration to the permitting process, or building guidelines are kind of changed out? Like, we're starting to allow more barn dominiums here and getting away from timber builds just because they're faster and they're more economical and they're more hurricane safe with things like that. Do you see a world where some of those things happening? I guess that's my question. What's the trickle down effect from a real estate perspective? Right.
There are two sides to that. And what's happening is there are the people that want it. They're like, yes, just, streamline all of this permitting. Let's get it going. Let's do this. And then there are the people that are against it because they think if they cut corners, it's going to make the situation worse, because our fire's not going to go away. They want to set, there's the group that says, we want to set new guidelines saying that everything that you build with needs to be fire retardant. Well, obviously that's a whole different conversation.
Right.
It's one where that's obviously more expensive. It's going to take different type of permitting. How do you, regulate that, right? Because that's not something that's set right now. But I think what needs to happen is, and I see this happening right now, is the streamlining of the permitting, I think, is going to be open to people that want to rebuild their primary residence. It's kind of like it's going to be help that's offered to somebody like me if my house burned down and I want to rebuild it. I don't think that would be a blanket case for investors that want to go in there and take advantage of a situation.
Of course.
For new building.
This is where I'm seeing there's like two different, probably multiple sides to the story and multiple fights that are going to be fought to get to a point where, everybody's kind of working cohesively together to rebuild a city. But there's a lot. I mean, as you know, California has a lot of activists. We have a lot of people that, are going to push back on anything, whether it's right or wrong, or, if you think it's a good idea, someone's going to have the opposite argument.
Of course.
So there is no, set way to handle it. There's no protocol put in place. So, but I do hear it, what the discussions are. Discussions are, let's help these people in any way that we can. And part of it being streamlining permitting. Let's help these people rebuild. Let's help them get to a point where, they have a home again. It's on average taking people, from what I understand from past experiences, around 2 years to get in there. Because what they're doing is they're sending crews out to go to these places that previously burned. And the people that have reestablished themselves and rebuilt, how long did it take you to get back to where you feel like you're in a normal life? And the process on average takes around 2 years to get back in your home. If you can imagine the next 2 years of your life. But then you look back at what we went through with COVID, that was 2 years. We were shut down for 2 years. And it seems like, that was just a blip, right? That was, we got through it. It happened. And now, we're post COVID. So time does go by quickly, but when you're attacking it from the front end of it, oh my God, that seems monumental. When you look back on it after the fact, it's like, we got through it. We're okay. So, I guess it's just going to be, can people emotionally handle it? Can people financially handle it? Or do they have to rethink their entire situation and, basically rebuild themselves somewhere else?
And it's probably going to be an overlapping bit of everything. Because like you said, I mean, you have the activists that are on both sides of things, but I think everybody knows and has seen in the United States, now, especially now that we're seeing a little bit less of social media influence on how politics are driven,
Yeah.
money still drives everything. The people who have money will influence what happens. Money will change hands. I mean, that's the backside and dark side of capitalism, right? Like, we'll just slide you some money over here and you're going to make this happen. I see a world where you start making it easier for developers to start building these homes back up because they can. They have the infrastructure already in place. You wanting to rebuild your house on 123 Main Street, it's probably a longer runway than developer Tom, because Tom has contractors and an infrastructure and, all those things. He can probably do it in half the time you can, theoretically. So do they spin that argument so now that they can build them faster because we can do it? There's so much that could happen, right? And
could happen, things. And I think that they're really, really trying to keep their eyes open for that to go the wrong way, so to speak.
Because there's probably not going to be a right. There's probably not going to be a right way. It's just the least right. Is where I hope for. Like, there is no right way. The right way is just making magical money disappear that the rest of the American taxpayers don't have to, eat the bill.
Right.
And just print money, and it hurts our economy as a whole.
Yeah.
But there's still, like you said, there's some celebrities and things in there with $20 million homes, but I imagine the average person who lost one of those 15,000 homes is not a $20 million per movie deal person. They're just people like you and I. And I think sometimes with all the political conjecture, it gets lost that, hey, there's a person there who no longer has a home, and the only option for them, if they want to stay where they're from, where their family is, and is
kids go to school and all the
the schools are gone, the gas stations are gone, the supermarkets are gone. It's gone. It's just gone. There's
what happens to that person, right? They can't probably just go down the street because it sounds like Temecula is going to go blow up on you again, theoretically. Anyways, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, and I hope it all goes. Again, there is no right way. I hope it doesn't go as horribly wrong where everyone says, "What the heck was that?" I hope it all just ends up nothing. If nothing else, I hope you guys all stay safe.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, I know that they're going to rebuild. Life's going to get back to the way it was. Maybe there are some improvements with that. After they get through this, but yeah, I think for the most part, a lot of that focus is on what, Ryan, you were talking about, those average homeowners, right? That have lived there their whole lives and are trying to put the pieces back together. And, celebrities are still humans, and,
yes.
you feel bad for them that, they've kind of gone through that, but, they have different capabilities to kind of rebuild, but, really having the focus on those other folks, because celebrities will get they'll get a bad rap. They're like, well, they have 100 billion and they can do whatever. And so they don't really kind of focus on caring about that. But so I think, that's, we're all, I think everybody's kind of rooting for that component. For for those people that are not at that level to kind of get back to where they need to get to, and so we're certainly thinking about everybody out there.
I think we'll have to get Colleen back on in like 6 months and say,
follow up and see.
What's the ramifications, right? It's still too new.
Well, because you're really the first ones to do this on such a massive scale. Like, we don't have this massive of a problem in South Carolina. We don't have that massive of a problem in Colorado. The light is just shined so brightly on it, and there's so many overlapping layers of people and money and government and permitting and all of these things that all flow together. Insurance, it's such a big one that not enough people think about. What's the trickle down effect of that? How do I feel that in South Carolina? What happens there affect the insurance game in Des Moines, Iowa, if anything? So I think you guys are going to set a new trend, and I'm curious to see what that all looks like, because you'll probably set a precedent. So if we do get some massive hurricane here in Charleston that wipes out 15,000 homes in Charleston, God forbid, they're going to say, hey, this is how they did it in the Palisades. We're going to do like that here. There's a formula for it. You're inventing a formula now.
Follow the
Probably,
lead.
Yeah. So
Follow the
in a
lead
few
for
months,
that.
I want to see how this has gone for you. And, you know, more than anything, we hope that everything stays well and safe and you and your family are okay. And, you know, business stays strong without being weird for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I do have a really quick short story that just came to mind when you said, so Tim Morrison from Dateline, you know, okay. So he did a story after they were trying to, it was like 3 days into the fire and they were trying to get it under control. And so he did this kind of, it was almost like a documentary of the history of wildfires in California. What I did not know, because you kind of hear about it as that's something that happened there, and you can't really wrap your head around it unless you're in it and you experience it, right? But what I didn't know was back in, I'll probably get the year wrong because it's not fresh in my mind right now, but back in the early 200s or 2000s, don't know the year, apparently Laguna, Laguna Beach and Laguna area had a fire like this, a wildfire that wiped all of them out. Had no idea. I go to Laguna all the time. Laguna's beautiful. I drive through the city of Laguna and Laguna Hills, and I've sold houses there, and I shop there, and we go and we eat at a restaurant overlooking the ocean. I would never have known that less than 20 years ago, all of it was burned, gone.
Yeah.
So yes, and this is what he was saying. California rebuilds. We will rebuild again. It's a thing that California has kind of wrapped its head around. It's a different era now because of how exposed everybody is to it, and you're actually living it because you've got helicopters flying over it and people standing in the middle of the fire, and it's kind of displayed to the world differently. But this is a thing that apparently it's a cycle that California goes through, and every once in a while a coastal city just gets wiped out by fire and then they rebuild. And it was that kind of opened my eyes up a little bit. And I watched the story and I'm like calling people. I'm like, did you know Laguna like burned down like 10 years ago or 15 years ago? I don't remember what the year was, but they're like, no. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you would never know if you were to drive through Laguna today. You would never know they ever had a fire. So if you think of it from that perspective, it's like, yes, California will rebuild and we will again have what we had. That's always a reassuring thing. But then on the flip side of that, the Paradise Fire, which wiped out the whole town of Paradise, the entire city was gone. A lot of those people fled California, like you were mentioning earlier. They're like, no, I'm done. I'm out. They got their insurance money and they went somewhere else and built a house or bought a house or whatever they did. They relocated their families out of the state. So I think a lot of that has to do with their means. What do you have? What are your resources to tap into? And what is your support system? The cities that your guys are mentioning that have less resources or less influence or less money are going to suffer more and may have to take more drastic measures to relocate their family compared to someone that has the means and the resources and the contacts and the influence to get things done and rebuild. So you've got two completely different situations and circumstances, and I think each of those are going to be reacted to differently.
Well, like you said, California has a history of going through natural disasters. The big quake in the 70s, you had the big quake in the 90s. You have a preparedness, as in you've done this somewhat templated formula before, but there wasn't eyes and cameras and social media in the 70s or the 90s or even the early 2000s, which is probably why you didn't hear about it as much. But now the light is shining, so I'm curious to see what happens all with this in the future. But more than anything, I hope the people that don't have as many options as others are the ones that are taken care of best and first. And maybe they do end up moving to a Texas or a North Carolina or somewhere just significantly cheaper and have a better life because of it. And I hope no matter what happens, they end up I don't want to say better off, but
Yeah.
stronger and okay.
Okay,
That's the
yeah.
only thing we can all hope and pray for, right?
Absolutely. So I have to go back to usually when we start off, we ask our guests on every Broker Bartenders episode what their favorite drink is and why. And I forgot to ask you that in the beginning. So we're going to end with that.
Well, and more positive because the first was like, hey, how you doing? Because you're literally and figuratively on fire.
Right.
So you're asking my favorite cocktail or my favorite drink or my favorite.
What's the difference? What would you think the difference is between a drink and a cocktail?
If I were going to go to just like well, of course I live in wine country. If I were to turn my computer this way, I think we counted around 160 bottles of wine, like right there. I mean, I'm looking. So
that'd be your favorite drink?
No. So this is where I'm going. It's like if I were just to say if I was going to go to my go-to drink, it would be pour yourself a glass of wine. I've got every wine you could possibly think of. You name it, it's here. I've got every red, white, rosé, sparkling, whatever you need. I've got it for you. You can do a wine tasting for weeks at my house.
We'll bring the cheese.
Okay, I've got that too. It's in the fridge at all times. I am prepared. I've got cheese, crackers, olives, you name it. We're set.
Love that.
Run over. But if I were going to say my favorite drink, and it's weird because if I were going to go from prior to meeting my current significant other, Tony, who we've been together for 11 years, I had never had bourbon prior to that. And I would say it would probably be any mix with rum in it. My rum would be my go-to for a cocktail. Now it's, and I dabbled in whiskey for a minute, but then went to bourbon. Now it would be probably an old fashioned.
All right. So you're going to a bar. You're going to a bar in Temecula, or no, you're on vacation. You come visit me in Charleston, South Carolina. We go to a nice high-end beach bar, and I say, hey, can I get my friend Colleen here? Can I get her an old fashioned? What's the bourbon you're putting in?
Oh, it would be Bullet Rye.
Bullet Rye.
Yeah.
Go on the Bullet Rye, yeah.
Yeah. I know. I mean, everyone's got their thing, but that's the one that I like in my old fashioned. I do like Woodford Reserve. I like Maker's Mark, and I do like, because we did the whole Kentucky bourbon tour. We went everywhere. And I like Four Roses. Do not like Wild Turkey. Sorry. But anyway, but in my old fashioned, I do like Bullet Rye. So
gun to your head, or the get the electric chair tomorrow type. You're ordering a Bullet Rye old fashioned.
Yes, unless I have a second. I've got a second. So a espresso martini would be if we're just gonna kind of like do a how do I put that? Like if we go to a lounge, I'm not gonna do wine, not ready for the bourbon yet. I could start with an espresso martini. And then the bourbon would be if I'm going to sit down in a soft leather chair and just kind of chill. So,
I do my best to control my language on these things, but how delightfully basic bitch of you.
Yes.
Right. Right. I know. I'm so pathetic.
No, but you know what? I think that's one of the beauties of things, and I learned this as a bartender. There is no right answer. There is no wrong answer. It's what makes you happy. And that's an applicable thing to anything in life. There is no right type of house. I don't care if you like contemporary or mid-century modern. I don't care if you like Corona or Bullet Rye. I don't care if you like men or women or anything. There is no right answer as long as it makes you happy.
As long as you're happy.
Sounds great.
The most important thing.
Love
right?
it. Love it.
Well, Colleen, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for. I really appreciate you coming on and really giving us some great insight. Like I said, having somebody that's not necessarily right in the mix, boots on the ground there, but I mean, you're there. You're
they're adjacent.
They're adjacent, appurtenant to the property. Correct. So.
I taught you well, Tom.
Thank you.
Spit take.
But yeah, yeah, so we really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're super busy, and we really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about that. And yeah, we will definitely want to circle back down the road and kind of see how all that developed and transpired through this. But yeah, appreciate you joining us today for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys thinking of me and having me on. Yeah, I mean, again,
please tell everyone we're thinking of them too. You know, not that Tom and I matter, but you know, next time you're talking to someone who needs the thoughts and prayers, knows that, you know, from South Carolina and Colorado, they're coming their way.
Absolutely. We all have gone through our different, you know, devastating situations. I mean, I remember when Charleston flooded and everybody was underwater, and because I had relatives that lived there. So my sister actually lived on the outskirts of Charleston. And then I had my son's best friend was stationed there for a couple of years with his wife. So I'm very familiar with it. I've been there, and I remember when it was underwater. I'm like, my God, that's so sad. That's where they got married. I went to their wedding there. So it's a beautiful place. Love
if you
it.
make your way out, there's a bullet rye old fashioned or espresso martini or a glass of wine with your name on it. You let me know, and I'll take you to the best beach bar there is.
That's awesome. I appreciate you guys so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, yep. For my wingman, Ryan Clark, I'm Tom Livingston. We are the Broker Bartenders.